Oversized clothing is everywhere. Look around any major city, scroll through fashion feeds, or walk into almost any clothing store, and you'll see the same pattern. Oversized hoodies, dropped shoulders, wide trousers, long tees, boxy jackets. For a lot of people, oversized clothing feels modern, relaxed, effortless. But here's the problem. Most men wearing oversized clothes don't actually look relaxed. They look structurally weaker. Not because oversized clothing is automatically bad. Oversized clothing can look extremely sharp when it's done correctly. Designers have used it for decades to create dramatic silhouettes. The issue is that most men don't understand the difference between intentional oversizing and structural collapse. And when that line gets crossed, the entire frame falls apart. Because clothing doesn't just cover the body, it redraws the outline of the body. And when the outline becomes unstable, the brain reads instability immediately. To understand why oversized clothing fails so often, you need to understand something important about how the human eye reads a silhouette. The brain doesn't look at clothing piece by piece. It reads the entire frame at once: shoulder width, torso balance, leg line, overall structure. These elements combine instantly to form a single impression: strong frame, balanced frame, or unstable frame. Oversized clothing changes those signals more aggressively than almost any other style choice. And the first place it breaks things is the shoulders. The shoulders act as the anchor of the entire silhouette. They define the outer boundary of your frame. Every other proportion, the torso, the arms, the legs, is interpreted relative to that width. When oversized clothing drops the shoulder seam too far down the arm, that anchor disappears. Instead of the shoulder defining the frame, the garment defines the frame. The result is a soft edge rather than a structural one. Your real shoulders may be perfectly balanced, but the clothing hides them. The brain no longer reads your body's actual width. It reads the loose fabric extending outward. And that creates a strange effect. Your upper body appears narrower and weaker, even though the garment itself is larger. It's not the size of the clothing that matters, it's where the structure begins. When the shoulder seam sits too low, the entire silhouette loses its anchor point. But the shoulder drop is only the beginning. The second problem oversized clothing creates is something called volume imbalance. When clothing becomes oversized, it often expands in every direction at once: the chest, the sleeves, the waist, the legs. Instead of shaping the body, it turns the silhouette into a rectangle, and rectangles are visually unstable. Think about the difference between a triangle and a box. A triangle has direction, a box has none. Most strong silhouettes contain some form of taper, broader near the shoulders, narrowing slightly toward the waist before expanding again through the hips and legs. Oversized clothing often removes that taper entirely. When the chest, waist, and hips all share the same width, the body becomes a block. The brain reads that block as structureless. This is why many men wearing oversized outfits appear smaller, even though the clothing itself is larger, because the silhouette has lost its hierarchy. The third issue oversized clothing creates is vertical compression. This one is less obvious, but incredibly powerful. Oversized garments often extend further down the body than structured ones. Longer hoodies, longer tees, longer jackets. Each of these pieces lowers the visual waistline. And when the waistline drops, the torso becomes longer while the legs become shorter. Since the brain relies heavily on leg length when estimating height and presence, this shift compresses the entire frame. The body suddenly appears shorter and more compact. What's interesting is that the oversized clothing trend didn't originally work this way. When designers use oversized silhouettes on the runway, they rarely oversize everything. Instead, they control the proportions carefully. A wide jacket might be paired with a structured pant. A long coat might be combined with a sharp shoulder. Volume appears in one area, while structure appears in another. That contrast creates balance. But when everything becomes oversized at once, oversized hoodie, oversized tee, oversized pants, oversized sleeves, there is no longer any point of control in the silhouette. The entire frame becomes loose. And loose frames are harder for the eye to organize. There's another subtle issue that oversized clothing introduces: fabric behavior. When clothing becomes larger, fabric begins to drape differently. Instead of holding shape, it begins to collapse. Soft cotton hoodies, lightweight knits, and thin jerseys follow gravity rather than structure. The fabric pulls downward and outward, further softening the silhouette. This is why structured outerwear, jackets, coats, heavier fabrics, tends to handle oversized proportions better. Structure maintains the line of the frame even when the garment itself is larger. Without that structure, oversized clothing becomes shapeless. and shapeless clothing removes visual authority. But here's where things get interesting. Oversized clothing isn't actually the enemy, poor proportion control is. Oversized garments can work extremely well when they follow three basic rules. First, anchor the shoulders. Even when wearing relaxed silhouettes, the shoulders should still define the frame. A slight drop can work, but extreme shoulder drops remove structure. Second, control the taper. If the upper body becomes wider, the lower body should maintain some shape. When both halves expand equally, the silhouette loses direction. Third, control the length. Long garments must be balanced by strong vertical flow in the legs. Otherwise, the torso expands downward and compresses the frame. These adjustments don't eliminate oversized style, they simply stabilize it. Look at two oversized outfits side by side. In the first, everything is oversized. Hoodie, sleeves, waist, pants. The frame becomes boxy and undefined. In the second, the jacket is oversized but structured. The pants taper slightly. The shoulder still anchors the frame. Both outfits are technically oversized, but one reads controlled, the other reads collapsed, and that difference is the difference between modern style and visual imbalance. Because oversized fashion isn't about wearing larger clothing, it's about manipulating space around the body. When that space is controlled, it creates presence. When it isn't, it erases it. Most men assume oversized clothing will make them look more relaxed or confident, but clothing doesn't communicate intention, it communicates structure. If the structure disappears, the message changes. Instead of relaxed confidence, the silhouette communicates instability, and the brain picks that up instantly. So before adopting oversized fashion trends, the question shouldn't be whether the clothing is large. The question should be whether the frame is still readable. Are the shoulders still anchoring the silhouette? Is there still a clear taper between the upper and lower body? Does the vertical line of the body remain intact? If those three signals remain stable, oversized clothing can look intentional. But when they disappear, the frame disappears with them. Because at the end of the day, style isn't about size, it's about structure. And the strongest silhouettes are always the ones the eye can read clearly. If you want to understand how clothing shapes perception, not just trends, subscribe. On this channel, we break down how proportions, structure, and silhouette quietly control presence.